Hey everyone, Alodar here. Today we got a massive piece of news regarding Classic World of Warcraft. I first got this piece of news literally as I was standing waiting for my elevator to go to work this morning. I got a private message in Discord. I clicked on it basically as my elevator door was opening up, and the title alone, my eyes were just like, what? I get into the elevator. There's nobody else in there at that point, and I'm looking at the title: Staggered Classic Content Update, 6 phases up from 4 to address itemization and power gains. And I was like, oh my god, they're actually doing something. And I'm reading this article as I'm going down. The elevator's stopping like every couple of floors all the way down, and the elevator's packed by the time I get to the bottom. And I basically had enough time to basically quickly read down to here, and then I was in my car and off to work. And I haven't really been able to look at this since. I got home like 5 minutes ago, and immediately I was like, I've got to sit down and make a video about this, because this is absolutely massive news. For those of you that don't, for those of you that remember, I was at BlizzCon 2018, and a lot of you probably have seen the video where they talked about the stage releases of content for Classic World of Warcraft. And to maybe people that aren't really hardcore about Classic World of Warcraft, maybe it looked good on screen, right? And it was like, oh, okay, they're coming out with 4 stages. But when you actually looked at the stage content and what was going to be released at the same time, it had a lot of us concerned, and it was going to make a lot of the content redundant, particularly Dire Maul. Dire Maul was like, there was a few things that really kind of made no sense, and I'm going to go through the phases. But Dire Maul was kind of the big one where people were like, no, that cannot be released at the at the initial launch of Classic World of Warcraft, and I'm going to go through why. Let me just quickly read through this. I'd only read it when I was going down the elevator, and I haven't really read it since, so I'm going to kind of do it here, and I'm just going to record as I go. Blizzard has announced that Classic WoW will be split up into 6 phases, up from 4. The first phase will include Onyxia Molten Core, but Dire Maul, Azurgos, and Kazakh will be pushed back. This is to address concerns about itemization impacting progression. I'm going to go over it when we get down to the phase. I want to like interrupt but I'm going to read down to here, and then we'll go through the phases, and I'll explain why this is so important. Under the old system announced at BlizzCon, some raids would be released with content that came later on with better itemized gear. For example, Dire Maul, loot impacting Molten Core progression. So that's so massive, so big that they're changing this. Under the new system, content will be launched mirroring the approach and schedule taken in original World of Warcraft. Unbelievable. So they already set up here, under the old system announced at BlizzCon, some raids would be released with content that came later on with better itemized gear. For example, Dire Maul, loot impacting Molten Core. Essentially, there was a lot of gear in Dire Maul that made raiding in Molten Core kind of redundant for some people, because they could get better gear out of Dire Maul, so people would be like, I'm not going to bother doing Molten Core. And it just kind of ruins that experience of going into Molten Core again for your first time. Anyways, Blackwing Lair and Zul'Gurub no longer release at the same time too, which makes sense as the 2 instances didn't release at the same time. Blackwing Lair came out first, right? And it would be strange to have Zul'Gurub and Chance present during Blackwing Lair progression. Exactly. So you go through, if you were trying to get through Blackwing Lair, originally in Classic World of Warcraft, you would have to go through Blackwing Lair, and Zul'Gurub hadn't come out yet. The way that Blizzard was initially going to release the phases was that Zul'Gurub would come out at the same time. You could raid through Zul'Gurub, get the enchants and stuff like that you normally wouldn't have had, and then go back and do Blackwing Lair, and it would have been a lot easier. So the fact that they're splitting this up is absolutely huge. Blizzard also plans to reconfigure loot tables in the fifth content phase to replicate the massive dungeon itemization in patch 1.10. Classic WoW will start with original drop tables, and then in the 5th content patch, update to the drop tables present in patch 1.12 in the 5th patch. So Titanic leggings will not be available prior to the 5th content patch. So essentially what it sounds like they're doing is they're going to pair up the patches and come out with them in a better order than they were initially going to do. I look at here's the table of what they were initially going to do at BlizzCon 2018. This is what they suggested they were going to do, and when you look at it now, like, I'm trying to say this without like just really bashing people at Blizzard, but you look at it and it's like, why did they not see this themselves? Why could they not see that this was such a massive problem? Don't get me wrong, Blizzard, if you're watching this video, I'm glad that you listened to the consumer, the people that are really excited about your game. And this, for all of you people that are like, oh, Blizzard never listens to this, Blizzard listened to us. Okay, this is massive. The game is going to be so much better because of a change like this. So initially they had Molten Core, Onyxia, Mordon, Dire Maul, Azergos, and Kazakh all at the same time. So, and in particular, Dire Maul and Molten Core and Onyxia all at the same time. When stuff that you get out of Dire Maul could be better than what you got out of Molten Core. It made raiding Molten Core more redundant. Like, a lot of people would be like, just not gonna do Molten Core. So it takes away from that content. Now that they've got more phases, they can spread it out a little bit more and make the game. It'd be like releasing all your content at the same time. It's obviously just not a good idea, because then people just kind of burn through the content and then they're done. They're like, okay, forget it. I'm gonna go do something else. Now they're extending. They're gonna have more phases. Presumably, it's the phases are going to be extended a little bit, and over 6 phases now. It's probably going to take. They're probably going to release it over a period of 2 years. So initially they were going to have those 6 in one stage. Now they've basically split it up right down the middle. So Molten Core, Onyxia, and Mordon. If you remember, Mordon was not released at the initial launch of Classic. I think it was just not complete. I think that was initially it. They just had not finished the instance yet. So that was it. They had intended on it being released at launch, but I just don't think that they were done. In NA it wasn't released, but remember in EU they didn't actually get to the launch of World of Warcraft in EU. I can't remember the exact month. Was it February, March, something like that? But in EU's launch, Mordon was actually in the game. So it was there at launch. So I don't really have a problem with Mordon being there in stage 1. I mean, it's not a huge impact. But Dire Maul having been there in stage 1 would have been just a travesty. Like, just absolutely a bad decision. So the fact that they've split that up is absolutely amazing. And then their stage 2, they were going to have Blackwing Lair, PvP, and Zul'Gurub. So the fact that Blackwing Lair and Zul'Gurub were going to be in the same phase, like 2 raids were going to be launched at the same time. And then on top of that, Zul'Gurub, because it was being launched at the same time, you could use a lot of the gear or enchants and stuff like that you get out of Zul'Gurub to be able to go back into Blackwing Lair and make it a lot easier than it initially was back in vanilla, or back in original release. So this is going to be their phase 3, where Blackwing Lair and then Darkmoon Faire is going to come out, the first Darkmoon Faire. PvP, it looks like they've taken it out. I believe I heard somewhere that they were going to re-examine this and decide where exactly that they want to plop the PvP down in. And then after stage 3, after people have had a chance to go through Blackwing Lair several times, over the course of a few months with their guild, then they'll come out with Zul'Gurub and the dragons, right? So now the reason why this is important is, like we've talked about before, is you don't want Zul'Gurub coming out at the same time as Blackwing Lair, because then it makes Blackwing Lair really easy to do, because you can start using the enchants and stuff that you get out of there to help Blackwing Lair be a lot easier. So that's going to be like, so your first main raid is going to be Molten Core, then it's going to be Blackwing Lair, then you'll be able to do Zul'Gurub, and the dragons will come out at the same time. And the reason why it's good that the dragons were moved away from the initial phase 3 is because you get a lot of loot off of those dragons that have nature resist that you would then need to use an AQ. And so it would only make sense that you want that to come out in a phase before AQs actually, before the gates are opened up and stuff like that, and you could actually then use your gear in the next phase. So the stage 5 then would be the AQ war effort, AQ raids, where you can then use the gear from the dragons from the previous phase. Tier 0.5 and the loot revamp. So that's where a lot of the gear and stuff like that was given a buff. Oh man. And then stage 6 is basically the same thing as what their old stage 4 would have been, where Naxxramas and the Scourge invasion happens. This is such a massive piece of news, and for people that are just kind of, they're not really sure if they're interested in Classic and they never really played it before, maybe it's a little bit difficult to understand, or it doesn't really make much sense. But essentially, it splits content up so that the content is stretched over a longer period of time. You've got more to do over a longer period of time, but also it's not allowing you to basically get around doing certain content like Molten Core and stuff like that. Molten Core was such an iconic piece of content in Classic World of Warcraft. To have that ruined by saying, we're just going to have the Dire Maul instances at release and allow people just to do that instead. I'm so glad that they decided not to. I like Dire Maul and it being in the game, but just not at release. That was not good at all. And it looks like they're going to have these phases over the course of 6 phases. So if the first phase is going to be at release, right? So Molten Core, Onyxia, and Mordon will be at release. So you're going to have 5 phases after that, and you essentially want those phases to come out over the course of a period of, I've told people in my stream several times that I'm 100% positive that Burning Crusade is going to come out. So they're going to want to extend these phases over the course of basically 2 years. So they're going to come out with Classic this summer. The summer afterwards is going to be the next World of Warcraft retail expansion, whatever that's called. And then a summer after that, which is 2 years after Classic, Burning Crusade will come out. So over the course of those 2 years, you're going to want those 6 phases stretched out so that people have continuous new stuff that's coming out every few months. So that basically by the time Naxxramas comes out, it's probably going to be like 4 months before Burning Crusade comes out. People are going to be able to go through Naxxramas as much as they can until Burning Crusade comes out, and then Burning Crusade servers will probably come up. How they'll implement that, I have no idea. I have a feeling that they're going to be fresh servers, or you're going to have the option to copy your character onto the Burning Crusade server and leave your vanilla character on the vanilla server if you want. Not really sure. That's 2 years away. Let's worry about that. Worry about that then. So the way it looks to me is it looks like once every 3 to 4 months you're probably going to have a new phase come out, with the last phase 6 coming out, with basically enough time to be able to battle through that, and then eventually the game will go into patch 1.12 and get ready for Burning Crusade. So that is absolutely just tremendous news, guys. Absolutely fantastic news. Do I go through this? This is the original post. I'll just quickly read through this, but I think I've pretty much gone through this, or talked a lot about what's down here. Let's see. At BlizzCon 2018, we proposed a plan to give Classic 4 content phases. We're planning on being centrally primary on raid. I think this is basically here. Is basically just this here is just a summarization of what they're talking about here. Currently, based on both your feedback and our own deliberations. So there you go, guys. Based on both your feedback. So if you're one of the people that made a video, talked about it on the forums, talked about it on Reddit, tweeted it, whatever. If you're one of those people, big, small content creator, somebody that's in stream that was just talking about it, give yourselves a pat on the back. Pat yourself on the back down in the comments below, because it's because of everybody giving their feedback on how terrible their initial phases, or their initial phases was going to be, how bad of an idea that was. You guys complaining about it and raising, giving your opinion on it. Now we've got it. I'm looking at this, and I honestly, like, I'm looking at these phases. Initially, I don't know if I would, like, if they came out with it the way it is now, the new proposed phases, I don't think that there's anything that I'm looking at going, nope, there's still something that I really don't like. Like, I would be very happy if it came out the way it is. I'd have to look at it in more detail. Maybe we'll talk about it on stream tonight. But in, like, just the split of what's coming out in which phase, it looks so good. It looks so perfect. Anyways, let's see. Our focus is still primarily on player power progression, but we're also aiming to capture what it felt like to play in a Realm community in original WoW. To do that, we're planning to mirror the approach taken by original WoW with patches paired together. So that's what I was talking about earlier. So we'll launch Classic with content from original WoW through patch 1.2. So patch 1.1 and 1.2 will be together. Then the second update will include content that was in the original 1.3 and 1.4. The third Classic update will have 1.5, 1.6, and so on. So that's it. That's exactly what they're doing, and that's the way it should be. I was, our first phase primarily focuses on launching Classic with the Nixia and Molten Core, but we've decided to hold off on Dire Maul for a while. Mordon is still in the first phase because it was originally released in December 18th, 2004. So, like, not even a month after Classic WoW had launched. Just 2 weeks after the first player hit level 60. But we recognize that Dire Maul is in a different category. Yes, for exactly what we talked about earlier and what we've been talking about for months now when they first announced these phases up here. So they've recognized that. Some of the loot that's obtainable in Dire Maul is so good that it would affect progression through those early raids. We're also planning to hold off on releasing Kha'Zix and Azergos at launch as well for the same reasons. The next change we're targeting addresses two concerns. First, Zul'Grub and Blackwing Lara unlocking at the same time would differ from how they originally came out, and it makes sense to not have gear and enchants from Zul'Grub available during early progression of Blackwing Lara. Secondly, the Emerald Dragon should be available earlier than the opening of AQ, and they gave us a way to start preparing nature resist gear for some of the encounters in AQ. So this is what we talked about up here. It made no sense that Blackwing Lara and Zul'Grub were coming out at the same time. I'm so glad that they've split that up. So Molten Core, you're gonna raid Molten Core, then you're gonna raid Blackwing Lara, then you're gonna go through Zul'Grub, then you're gonna go through AQ 40, then AQ and AQ 20 and AQ 40, then you're gonna go through Nax. Like, each phase has another major piece of raiding content. Beautiful. Along the way, we've taken a close look at items that provided the biggest power gains, many of which were introduced in 1.10 as part of a sweeping dungeon itemization pass. That patch was when tier 0.5 gear was introduced and relics were added to the drop tables of many bosses. It also adjusted drop rates and drop locations of a lot of gear to make room for the relics. We've gone back to the reconstruction of many of the most heavily affected drop tables as they existed prior to the 1.10 patch, and we're planning to update the drop tables alongside the AQ war effort. Prior to the AQ unlock, most of the drop rates and locations will look as they did in the patches prior to 1.10 with exceptions. There are lots of little changes made in earlier patches that don't have a big effect on player power, and in those cases we're planning to use... Okay, so very quickly, this is just something to note. Where they start. There are lots of little changes made in earlier patches that don't have a big effect on player power, and in those cases we're planning to use the 1.112 drop. So there's a couple of items where they're just going to say, you know what, we're just going to use 1.12 because they don't really have a big impact on the end game, or on the game as a whole. So you're going to have some people that are going to be like, no, I want no changes. They got to be exactly the same. I'm okay with this. We got this, guys. We got this. Like, this is a small thing in comparison to what this was up here. One example of the many items that we're planning for is Titanic leggings, which was a world drop that first appeared in 1.10. We can confirm that it will be controlled by the same content unlock that restricts the other 1.10 loot changes. Okay, and then this just goes through the new progression phase, or the new phases. Whereas that's what we've got up here. We haven't yet determined exactly when phases 2 to 6 will occur. And PvP content is noticeably missing from the list above. That's because we're still evaluating our options regarding PvP rewards, as they also change over time, both in power and in terms of which PvP reward items were available. While we can't elaborate on every detail of every step we're going to take yet, we're here reading all of your questions, and we're going to keep the answers coming. Thank you. So there you go. For all of you that are saying that Blizzard is not listening, Blizzard doesn't give a rat's ass about you, etc., etc., here it is, folks. They changed this because they saw how important this was, and they did it because everybody in the community stepped up and said, this is a terrible idea. And what did they do? They showed that they were listening. I can't remember the last time where I sat there and I looked at something that they've changed and said, they're listening. And this is the first time in a long, it may have been since they announced Classic, honestly. We're listening. Isn't that what J. Allen Brack said in his video? We're listening. We hear you. And this is like the second time since then. This is the only time since then where I've been like, okay, they're listening. They hear us. Anyways, this is a great piece of news, guys. I'm gonna leave it there because I'm just gonna keep mumbling on, and I've got to end the video at some point. So if you're wanting to talk about this at all, please by all means send me a tweet or come visit me on my stream, twitch.tv/Alodar. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. If you ever want to talk about anything to do with Classic, please come by my Twitch stream, twitch.tv/Alodar. Follow me on Twitter, etc., etc. I just can't. I can't stop talking about how happy I am that they've done this. Anyways, I'm gonna leave it there, guys. That's all I've got for this. I'm gonna upload this video, and then I'm gonna immediately turn on my stream. So have a good night, everyone. I'll talk to you soon.